Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to take a look at the March Smart Art box. I know I've got an April one on the way, so I've got to get cracking on this. There are some fun materials in here. Let's take a look and see what we got. Oh, this video is sponsored by smartartbox.com. You can find a link to where you can find these boxes in the video description, and they do ship to most countries, a lot of countries all over the world, so chances are you are living someplace where you can get one of these boxes delivered to your door every month, and it's an artsy surprise, which is always fun. You never know what you're going to get. It's always something I look forward to. So this is the pamphlet that comes with every box. The thing I really enjoy is that if I have no ideas of what to do, there's an example. There is a brief history of the project you're going to do. This month is alcohol inks, and it also goes into the materials that come in the box, what they are, where you can find them. It just makes it easy to know about these things in case you want to replenish, and it's really wonderful if you are just getting into art or you're teaching homeschool art and you want something to kind of have a little structure. So that brochure is really nice for that. This month we have YUPO paper. This is translucent YUPO, which I don't know if it's a really, oh yeah, that is quite a bit different than the regular kind. You can definitely see through it. Look at that, that's kind of cool. Okay, my brain is starting to wake up with some ideas now. We have a paintbrush. This is a number 2 filbert by Princeton. It's the Aspen line. We have a Sakura Microperm 05 permanent on most surfaces pen. And let me just give this a smell. Okay, this doesn't smell like alcohol, so I should be able to draw with this, and then these inks should not bother it. So hopefully that's the case. So we got a nice pen there. We have 3 colors of Pinata inks, and actually I used Pinata inks. They were the first alcohol inks I'd ever used because my local art store had them, and then the Tim Holtz inks came out later. But the thing I always loved about the Pinata colors is that they offered really bright primary colors, and when the Tim Holtz alcohol inks first came out, they were all like kind of like mixed and kind of trend colors, and a lot of times I wanted to mix my own, and you've got a yellow, a blue, and a red, so we should be able to mix whatever we want from these. I really love that. Anytime you're getting into a new material, I really think you should get your primary colors because you're going to get a lot more usefulness out of it, and then you can kind of have a lot more versatility. That way you're not investing too much before you decide whether you like something or not. We also have some cleanup solution, which is probably similar to an alcohol. Oh yeah, it smells like denatured alcohol or ethanol maybe. And we have Claro Extender. I don't know what this is. I'm going to smell it though, because I like to smell everything. Oh, that's strange. I can't really place that smell. It smells like a new pencil box, kind of, so I'm not sure what that chemical is, but I've sniffed it, so we ought to have a lot of fun here today, folks. And we have a clear blending pen, which would be alcohol-based, and that will help us move around our ink. So I have no idea what I'm going to make today, but you're going to experience it firsthand with me, so without further ado, let's get to the tutorial. Okay, so this paper is translucent. If I lay it on top, you're going to be able to see through it. So I wanted to tape it down to something, so if I wanted to pick up my paper and move it around, I could. So what I'm going to do is actually just use some masking tape. I want to make sure I can paint up to the edge if I want to. So I'm just going to ball up masking tape in the corners on the back, and I think you can paint on either side of this. I think especially with alcohol ink, because that sticks to non-porous surfaces. I typically will use YUPO with watercolor. So if you do get this kit, try it with watercolor. It's really awesome. Even like the kids' watercolor. It doesn't have to be anything special. And I'm going to use that to stick it down to actually cut this out of my Smart Art box so I could use it as a little palette. I'm working on a silicone craft sheet. I've already stained it once with alcohol ink, so I'm not really concerned with it, but just to let you know that these alcohol inks can stain pretty much any surface you're going to work on, so just be aware of that. And if you don't want to stain it, put like a trash bag down or something. And I'm going to begin by sketching, and I think I would like to have like a field of flowers, and then a row of trees, and maybe some mountains and a sunset. So I'm going to start just by kind of roughly sketching in a little field of close-up flowers. I'm just gonna do like this kind of wiggly, scribbly line to represent that. I have no idea how this is gonna come out. I don't work with alcohol ink very often. And then I am gonna put just kind of like a line for a ridge of mountains far away. Now I am looking at a reference photo. I can actually show it to you. I found these wonderful books a few months ago on Amazon. I've known of these for a long time because I'd kicked myself that I didn't buy them before, but the series is called Artist's Photo Reference, and there's landscape, there's textures, there's animals, flowers, and I saw this little landscape in there, and these photos are made so that artists can use them. So I'm not breaking any rules by working from this picture, although I know my picture's not really going to look much like it when I'm all done. But I just like to point that out because it is such an awesome reference source for anybody. And I like having stuff in a book. I don't have to look it up online. So I've pretty much divided this into thirds. So I've got the rule of thirds going on, which is really, it's a very good compositional tool. And I'm going to throw in some happy little trees. Yeah. So I am using this pen pretty fast and loosely here. I really like using a pen on the YUPO. I've never done that before. You can get really crisp lines because the paper's so smooth. And this is a, like I mentioned before, a 0.5 nib, which is a nice size. I usually like a 0.3 or 0.5. I'm not somebody who works with the really fine ones because I find that I damage them really easily. You want to have some scale here. So our closest things will be these flowers that we're going to have in front. Maybe I'll make like poppies. Just do some very loose drawing in here. So already I'm not doing what the picture is, but that's all right because I just want to get kind of like a maybe a close-up one here. Just kind of get a get something to go by. You know, just get something to kind of break the ice. And throw in a few more of these trees, which I'll probably edit out this bit because this is going to be pretty boring. My trees are all pretty much the same. I start with a line. Let's put a tall one here. I start with a line. I'll just draw it slow for you once, and you can make as many as you want. And then I just kind of do some scribbly branches off. I think YUPO is excellent when you want to get that abstract look, especially if you're somebody who has a hard time with abstracts and has a hard time loosening up. You could do this continuous line style, meaning you do the whole thing and you don't even pick up the pen once. That would be a really fun way to try that technique. Because sometimes I think when you have a supply that has a lot of potential like YUPO, it can be very intimidating because there's so many options of what you can use it on and what you can do with it that it's hard to, you know, commit to one. So just carry on making trees along this line like I am here, and we'll be back when I have all of these trees sketched in. Okay, I have my sketch down. I was thinking originally I'd do a sunset, but now I realize if I did a sunset, then everything would be silhouetted, not just the trees. So I decided that I would do probably a blue sky. Now, I just have a ceramic palette here with a couple clean wells I'm going to use as an alcohol ink palette, so I can mix if I want to. And I'm just going to put a few drops in each of those. Now I can clean this up with alcohol when I'm done because it's ceramic. A plastic palette might stain, but a palette's meant to be used, so I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Now one of these is an extender, so I'm thinking that I'd want to use this if I wanted to make my color a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add a little bit of that. Of course I could read the directions that came with it, and that would probably be something, wouldn't it? So I'm going to add this. Oh, you know what the extender does? It makes it thicker, so it's not going to slide around so much. So that actually could be quite useful, but you know what? It's making my trees dissolve, so that is not ideal. So I'm going to go kind of around the trees. I don't know if the ink on its own is supposed to move that. Maybe I didn't let it dry long enough. You don't want to heat set this paper because it can, I'm going to rinse that off, because it can warp, but I should have done a little test on the ink to see if it would smear. Let me try some of this on its own and see if it smears it without the extender. Maybe it's the extender that's making it smear. No, it's smearing. I think it's just, I'm almost thinking it might be how stiff this brush is. I'm going to grab a softer brush because that to me this feels like it should be an oil, like more of an acrylic or an oil painting brush, something for heavy paints, not something for light medium like this. I'm using this watercolor brush, and I typically don't use watercolor brushes with alcohol inks. However, this particular brush I left in the water too long and it swelled, and so I replaced it. I do have a replacement brush for this. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to try a little more of that extender though, because this is like drying up really quick. I'm getting too hesitant because I'm worried about my trees dissolving. So I guess if you're following this at home, I would draw the trees on after. I think we can be careful. I think it's maybe the ink is having a hard time bonding with the paper, or maybe I didn't let it dry long enough. Your guess is as good as mine. There we go. I guess you could make it snow in the sky if you spattered on some alcohol. Make textures in there if you want to. Make some clouds. I don't know. Tip it, maybe. Now I was thinking, because this is translucent, I think it'd be really cool if you were like a school teacher and you did like had all the kids do one of these and you stuck them in the wall on the window, because then the sun would come through it and it would be really pretty. So there's a little idea if you're a school teacher. Now I feel like this is doing something weird to my brush. My brush feels weird now. I'm gonna have to wash that really well when I'm done. Okay, so back here we've got some mountains, and I think I'll make them kind of purpley. It does not appear that those colors are going to make a good purple though, but that's alright. I don't need a super bright purple, so we will mix that up and see what we get. A grade purple is fine. It looks like that's what we're going to get. I'm actually going to try this cleanup solution because that extender is making my ink so thick and yucky, and maybe it could be because I just rinsed my brush off in water, so I probably shouldn't have done that. But alcohol dissolves in water, so I would think it would be fine. Yeah, I think I'm going to use, this cleanup solution is like an alcohol, so I think that's what I'm going to use just because I was having difficulty with that cleanup solution. I'm going to do a little more blue in there. It's so hard for me not to, I've got some watercolors on the other side of that palette, it's so hard for me not to dip into that, like I got a purple right there. Alright, this is not making a good purple. It's like making an inky black almost. But I think it'll be fine. You know what? You get what you get, you don't get upset. That's what we're going to do here. We are not going to get upset. We are going to make our faraway misty mountains and try not to trash our trees in the process. I'm glad I didn't spend a lot of time on those trees because something tells me I'm going to be redrawing them in. That's alright. They are completely dissolving. Oh my gosh. It's like there's a ghost where trees used to be. I feel it's like a PSA for the Arbor Day Foundation. Like, once this land was covered in trees, but now bad people have chopped them down. This has been a public service announcement. Don't ruin your forests. Brought to you by the Frugal Crafter. The Arbor Day Foundation. I'm not affiliated with the Arbor Day Foundation. I don't want to get emails. Hey, now look at that's all green, I think, from the black that was in the little pen here that we used. The, what's this called? Microperm by Sakura. Perm, not so much. Not so permanent, Sakura, when you're dealing with alcohol inks, apparently. Yeah, it probably says right in the pamphlet, don't use this over. Don't use alcohol inks over this. Make sure you use it afterwards. So I'm just going to fill in all of this area basically, and I'll just redraw the trees in. Hopefully I can go over with the with that pen and it's not going to damage the tip. I'm going to drip. Oh, look at that. That's pretty. I'm just going to drip some of that in there and see what happens. I think this extender is interesting. It does some it's like it thickens it or something. It's very strange. It smells, I hope it's okay to mix all these chemicals because they smell a little funky. I can't quite place a smell though, other than new pencil box smell. Look at that, that's a really kind of a cool effect though. Look at that. I got these paintings once. My husband and I went to Quebec City back before we had kids, before we were married even, and we got this. There was a street artist, and and I couldn't figure out how he did the work that he did. It seemed to be like on a glossy like painting board, and there were just these really vibrant abstract landscapes, and I think that it was probably alcohol ink. That's kind of cool. I don't know if my trees will end up back on top of that or not. I really like that. I probably will need at least some trees because I've got that stuff happening up in the sky, but That's kind of neat. Yeah, make sure you read your instructions before you follow this tutorial. If I find any warning information, I will post it in the video description. That's really interesting looking. I like all those different little cells of it's almost like you've got all these boulders, like there's boulder cliffs or something. I think that's what these mountains might turn into, more like boulders. Oh, that's so cool. Before, when I've used with alcohol, I haven't used the alcohol ink on the YUPO before, but like when I'd use watercolor on YUPO, or alcohol ink on glossy cardstock, I feel like it was just slippery and going everywhere. But I feel like this is actually slower moving than I thought it would be. Like it's not moving around too much, and I think it probably will change if I leave it and I come back to it later. So that's cool. I am going to go in with some green now, and honestly, I think I will not even worry about my drawing there. I'm going to add a little blue to my yellow and mix up some green. I think I will go right ahead and throw some of that cleanup solution in there. I'm really not sure what brush I should use. This one's not looking too healthy. So, I guess I'll go back to this because maybe that's why they put that brush in there. Maybe I'm not supposed to use other brushes with that. So we'll go back to this and we'll just put a coating of that in there and see what happens. I kind of feel like I can repel, because you can definitely work back into the other mixture and push it around because of the alcohol in the solution. I'm just going to wipe up my brush. I'm not going to rinse it anymore. I don't think I want to introduce water into this mayhem. Now, you know what? Look at this. These lines don't seem to be moving. I think I didn't give it enough time to dry. I think that's what my problem was. So, my recommendation for you guys at home is to let your background dry after you do your inking, and I think you'll be all set. I mean, granted, we had a lot of ink in those trees, so maybe it was just too much for the surface to handle, but look, those poppies aren't bleeding, so I think it might be a time issue. You give it more time and it's fine. I'm going to add a little more blue to that to darken it up. And maybe I'll add some of this extender stuff and see what that does. I feel like a mad scientist here. You know what? That extender is making it lift up. I think it's the extender that's lifting the ink because that bit that I went through erased some of those lines. So it must be something that's in the extender that is breaking down. Because, yeah, I can definitely lift that up with the extender. Oh, this is cool though. I really like this. Now I might actually put some drops of ink on its own in there and see what happens. Ooh, that's kind of cool. It's about the same though as using the alcohol, I think. Because it's such a light color, I think. I don't think I want to... I think I want more of a dotty texture. I wonder... Maybe I'll flick some of this on. Let me... I wish I had a clean spot. Oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh, I like that. I should probably put something over the sky though, because I'm getting dots in the sky. I didn't think that very well through. Let's set this over that. And maybe do a little blue in there. The alcohol seems to be really working well. Hopefully I don't get my camera. I'm going to dab some in there because where I did those drops that were yellow, that's too uniform in there. I've completely lost my poppy sketch by now, but that's fine because I kind of intended that I was going to lose that after what happened with our trees. So I'm fine. I'm not bothered by that. Ooh, I like that. That's looking pretty cool. I like all those cool textures. This would be cool to do like a seascape. Because you've got all this brininess happening in there. Oh, and I love where it just kind of like meets the stuff up there. That is really cool. Well, at this point, I think I better let it dry because it's still moving and active. The surface is still active. So I'm going to let it dry and then we'll come back and do a little more to it. Okay, we are dry here. I actually let this dry overnight to make sure that everything would settle and I could give my eyes kind of a break. So what I'm going to try doing now is using this Microperm pen to do my trees again. I really had liked the way the trees looked that I sketched on originally, so I was kind of bummed when they just kind of disintegrated there, but I also liked what happened in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my trees back in. Since you saw me do that before, you don't need to see me do it again. So I'll just sketch those in and then we'll meet back here again. Okay, I did loosely sketch in some of the trees. As I was going over here, I was kind of feeling that my pen was running out of ink, but I think it was just kind of picking up some of the Clairol extender that was kind of in the ink. So what I did was I just scribbled it on a scrap just to take anything off the nib. So before I put my pen away, I recap it. I'm just scribbling it to make sure if it picked up any of the ink underneath that I could just kind of clean it off so it didn't damage my nib, because sometimes nibs can clog up if you go over a different media. I'm going to make some really dark here, and I'm just going to mix my blue and red together and make myself a really dark color, because I want to kind of go in on some of these trees and kind of fill them in a little bit towards the bottom, and maybe I'll add a couple others in there. I'm really not sure how this is gonna look. This one I kept kind of like more to the background, and maybe I will spread it around with this other brush. It's not quite as juicy. You know, I think when you go in with the alcohol ink, it's much better to do like stones and flowers and stuff, because I'm noticing I've kind of lost some of that tree texture. So maybe going back in there with the pen, or maybe I'll use like maybe I'll use the blender marker or something to do that. Actually though, if I pick up the ink and I go in with a brush, I do have a lot more. I can keep that line work a little bit better. I like the idea of having it kind of really thick and inky towards the bottom, and then being able to see the pen lines as you get up higher, and you can see kind of in between the branches. I just want to make sure that it feels like it's part of this picture, not that it's just kind of just hanging out there on its own, because all the other pen work has been kind of dissolved. So I just want to make sure that everything appears to be part of the same picture. I guess I don't like that shape in there after all. I'm going to fill that in. So I can see why they included this brush, because you can get a much more control with like a softer brush that holds so much ink that you end up with probably more ink than you bargained for. Alright, oh, and to clean up your brushes, rinse them kind of with some rubbing alcohol, and then clean them up with this cleanup solution to get any extra residue out so your brushes will remain soft. But the good news is, and I learned this, don't ask me how I know this, you can wait till the next day to clean your brushes in case you don't get to it right off the bat. Alright, this pen is a clear blender like you would use if you were doing any sort of, marker art, like alcohol marker art. You would use this to lift up color or to force colors together. So I'm using it as an eraser here to erase out some flower shapes. Now the nib is going to get really dirty, so just grab any old scrap of paper and just scribble it off every once in a while. This is going to do a number on your marker, so I probably would, not use your best markers for this. If you got the Smart Art kit, use that one. You can get very inexpensive dual tip markers for like $2 at Consumer Crafts, the Studio 71 line, which is identical to the Art Alternatives line, really. I don't think this was a very expensive one. Or you could even use a Q-tip dipped in rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol for the same effect. So you can see right now how this is fraying. It's just, even though this is a smooth surface, it just is having a hard time. It's having a hard time with all this stuff it's picking up and then me wiping off the ink. So just kind of keep that in mind. I've used this particular marker before, not this particular marker, but another one of these before, and I do notice that the brush tip on the clear blenders of this brand, and it doesn't seem to happen with the colored ones, but with the clear blenders, the brush tips just fray like crazy, and with very little use. I'm not sure what it is about the clear blender, but the other markers I have in the Art Alternatives are fine. the brush tips, it's just that darn clear, wants to fray. And then if you want any little further flowers, just kind of make little dots like that. All right, you could even drop in some little bits of alcohol if you want to. I'm just going to go real light just to show you here, and it will give you a really bright, hard edge shape. Just a tiny little drop. You could even do that with a softer paintbrush. I would use your synthetics, not a natural hairbrush, because I think the alcohol will dry out a natural hairbrush too much. And see how it does pull it right back to the white when you put that alcohol solution down. So now I'm actually going to try going right into the wet solution with some wet ink and see what happens. There we go. I'm trying to do just a little bit so I can do some yellow in there too, because I think having those kind of orangey red poppies would look really pretty. And because we removed the color underneath, we're getting a really vibrant look, because it's not mixing in with that green, because that's what would happen. And if they don't mix enough, you can go in and alter that. So I also thought maybe I would flick some of that in. So I think I have a very inexpensive brush I can use for this. I'm just going to use this inexpensive brush and try to flick on some smaller spatters. I am going to cover it with a scrap, just so I don't get it where I don't want it. I'm actually going to rest that scrap on my palette so it's not touching. And then I am going to do some of the clear blending solution, the cleanup solution, and I'm going to flick that on. I'm going to need a little bit more than that. It's not coming off my brush. I don't have quite enough, I guess. So this is the yellow and the cleanup solution I'm using. I think the extender makes it a little too thick to spatter it. There we go. Now that gives it some really cool effects. Hopefully it didn't hit the camera. And there we can kind of see what the ink just kind of does on its own. So I do have some issues there where everything's kind of blending out of the flower shape. So I think I will just kind of blot that a little bit. And then I can go in later and redefine those flowers, but I kind of like what's going on there. Now, I think I'll grab the chisel end of this brush, since it was having kind of a hard time using the brush end, and kind of draw in some stems. And what that's doing is lifting up the ink underneath. I'm just going to scribble off my my pen as needed. There goes my marker cap. I have to remember I dropped that on the floor. I don't want to ruin all the cool texture that I have there though, so I'm just kind of putting them in here and there. Now I can also pick up some of the yellow or the green and put them in that color. I'm not going to have very much contrast because I already have green there, but it will just kind of break up the texture a little bit and give me the appearance of the stems, mainly because it's just kind of changing the direction of the texture underneath. Oh, I think I might actually flick in some red as well, but I definitely want to put that there. I wish I had another brush, because I really like the way that one flicks. Let me try cleaning that up here. I wish I had my, oh, I have a lot of wishes today, don't I? I wish I had my alcohol out here, my regular rubbing alcohol. I'm just gonna wipe off this brush as best as I can, try to get as much of that mix out of there, and then I'll go in with some red. Try to keep it fairly clean there on the side. The colors do stay pretty bright, which is nice. So these should look like poppies further away. and not like a massacre happened, hopefully. My table looks like a massacre happened. Ooh, now I'm liking what's happening there. Now I kind of want to do some more yellow. I'm just going to wipe off my brush really well and wipe off a section on my palette. So again, you'll want to clean off your palette with rubbing alcohol and probably follow it up with some dish soap if some stains persist. Alright, this is going to give me more of an orange because I have some red on my brush still. Ooh, I'm really liking that. That's kind of cool. So now what I need to do is let this dry, and for two reasons I don't want to heat dry this, because if I heat dry it, it could catch on fire because alcohol ink is very flammable, and also because it could warp the YUPO paper. So I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll come back, add a few more details with a pen, and we'll be done. I love just letting the ink play and maybe just doing a dab here or a dab there. It really can suggest so much. So something I was doing in here, now you don't have to do this, but for these larger trees that are kind of in front, I'm using the, oh my gosh, looks like I have a wound. I'm using the clear marker here, the chisel edge, to kind of just make like indications of the trunk. I'm not showing a trunk the whole way up because it would be branches in front, but I am just kind of just putting some indications in there, and you can do some indications of branches if you want to. You know, definitely less is more, but it can just give you a little bit of a break in the really dark areas you have there if you like. I didn't do it on these smaller trees in the background, but I think for some of the focal points it can, or some of the more focal trees, it can really give you kind of a cool effect. And if you don't like it, you can always dab more ink over it. That's the wonderful thing about this project, is that it's so forgiving, and you can keep messing with it until you get the effect that you want. You can also go through and highlight anything you want in the flowers. I really kind of like the way they are, but if you feel like you've lost an edge or something, then you can go in and bring it back. You don't want to over fuss with it, but you definitely can manipulate a little bit so that you can bring out highlights and accent areas that you want to. We got a little more drying time on this, and then we'll go in with our pen and finish it up. I have to say I'm liking this way more than I thought I was, and I'm getting very impatient and I want to go in with the pen. So I mean, it's literally like 30 seconds after I stopped the video before. So what I'm doing is I'm just gently touching the areas that I want to, that I know I want to add some detail to, and if it's not sticking to my finger when I do it, then I'm going to go in and add some centers onto some of these larger poppies. Just kind of give it a little tap to make sure that that it's going to work for you and not gonna, you know, gum up your marker. And of course you will be wanting to scribble off this pen when you're done. I like this kind of lollipop flower type look. That's still a little sticky. That's a little sticky. This one, I think I might even give it a little bit of an outline. Maybe give it like it's turned away. Okay, that one definitely, I could feel it picking up some of the alcohol ink, so I'm just going to scribble that off. Because this is not an alcohol ink pen, this is, I would say it's probably like an India ink pen. This one also gives me the appearance that it's turned away, so I just want to outline that. And actually, it might be kind of a good stopping point, like if you only accent the ones that aren't sticky at this point, and then you'll just automatically not accent them all, and it will probably look a lot more natural than going in and fussing with every single flower that you have here. And again, once the ink stops flowing, just go and scribble it on a scrap, and that will help it get going again. So I'm just either doing a kind of a round scribble in the center, or I'm kind of making the flower look a little turned. I'm just trying not to overdo anything. You can even do it like the Oriental poppies, where you have the those patches of black on each petal. And you can just give little, if you want to, indications of stems. I'm not sure if I like it with the stems or just on its own. If you wanted to put birds in the sky, you could do it with this pen. Why not? Let's do a couple birds. I'm gonna move my my palette out of the way. So I'm just gonna do a little circle for a head, do some wings, do a little tail. And so I usually do like one kind of close up, and then I'll do some flying V's behind that. And I like to do things in threes because it's just a little more pleasing to the eye. And there we have it. There's our fun little alcohol ink abstract landscape. Boy, this was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. I was trying to think, what am I going to do with alcohol paper? And I'd kind of been had jewelry on the mind. I was like, well, maybe I can, you know, glue it to some cardboard and make some really funky pendants with it. But in the end, I just ended up playing and I came up with this, and gosh, it was so much fun. I hope you give it a try. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I will put any tips that I shared in the video description, just so you can kind of have a handy reference. And that's all there is to it. If you like these Smart Art Box projects, you may enjoy a Smart Art Box subscription. I'll have information on how you can sign up in the video description, and they do deliver to many countries worldwide. You get a surprise box of art supplies to your door with instructions every single month, so it's really nice for homeschoolers or people that just want to branch out in their artwork. And it's about just under 50 bucks a month if you go month to month, and it's a little bit cheaper if you get a longer subscription. So you can check all that out in the video description. I sure enjoy getting my box every month. It's always something fun to look forward to, and I always end up making something that I otherwise wouldn't have made. So that's a win-win-win, I think. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video and share it with your crafty friends. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.